Today I'm going to film a video to make this little star motif, which was designed to go in a little keyring fob for attaching to your keys. However, I realised this morning as we're approaching Christmas that it would also make a nice little bauble motif. It's approximately 35mm across, or just over an inch, and you could make these and hang them on your Christmas tree. So that's what I thought I'd demonstrate it with this morning. Because I'm going to do it for a Christmas tree, this little star, I'm not going to do the picot edges. I'm going to just do them as winky pins, and I'm also going to put one of the pair of passives on the outside edge as a metallic glitter thread, just to add a bit more Christmassy feel to it. If you're more experienced, you could actually put the metallic, a fine metallic, in as the worker on the star, but that would be a little bit more tricky because there are several workers and you'd have to keep adding workers in. So the metallic thread I'm going to use is this one. It's quite a fine metallic thread, and I like it to work it alongside the Finca 60 that the motif is actually worked in. Now this pattern sheet does actually have a heart on it. This would be a nice little motif for a card, as would the star if you want to send a small gift through the post with a little note on it that you can hang it on your tree afterwards. Both the heart and the star would make nice little motifs for that. Or you could put them in the key rings as I originally designed them for. I will do the heart one at a later date and post that later on, either this year or early next year. The pattern sheet does have directions for the star and the working directions, so if you've bought the pattern you can refer to that as we go along. So I'm going to start the motif right at the top. Now if you've bought the ready to work patterns, the writing goes over the top of the pattern. If you've pricked it yourself, you want this point to be the starting point at the top. And because I'm going to actually make it as a little motif, I'm going to do it with a hanging loop. So I will take the trail, the outside trail, around to between two of these. So when I'm hanging it, I can finish here and form a hanging loop with it. But that will come later. So we'll get started. So we'll start off with two pairs of your main colour thread, if you're working up with different colours, in open formation over the top pin. And as I say, I'm just going to do it with winky pins, so I put two twists on one of the pairs and they're ready to start work. Now if you're doing a picot, you do 5 twists and a cloth stitch as a false picot. I'm now going to hang the pairs in for the trail in both directions. So I'm just going to put a temporary pin in one of the pinholes and put the pairs. Now I want the glitter thread to be on the outside. It can be any position you like in there, but I personally think that on the outside edge will give you more sparkle, and it will also make the finishing a little bit easier at the end. I'm not sure if you can actually see the glitter thread too much, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I want this for a little card, for a gift for someone for Christmas, and I'll put a note on that you can hang it on the tree for next year. So I'll open formation, I've got 3 pairs in each direction, and we're ready to start work. And I'm going to work from the worker pair at the top that I put on the pin, the left hand pair through the left hand 3, and the right hand one through the right hand 3 pairs, just to get started. And then I'm going to cloth stitch the 2 workers together, put 1 twist on each and put the pin up underneath the pin I've already got in on the outside edge and just tension them up. Now I'm going to start working in one direction. I think I'll start working to the left first. So I'm going to put a bridge like this across the pairs to hold them in place. If you haven't got one of these, then you can use one of the bobbin holders that you can get for continental ones. You can put that across. You can get smaller versions of this to use. Anything just to stop these bobbins slipping about a little bit. But before I do that, I'm just going to cover the pin I've just put in so that the pair of workers can stay on that side with those bobbins. If you just pin these down, it stops them moving about and just makes your lace a little bit easier to tension when you start working a piece like this. Working it in both directions, and I'm going to be adding pairs in for the plaits until I get round to this side, and then I can start the plaits, and then I'll work it round to here, adding pairs in as well. So I'll just show you adding the pairs in for the first one, and then I can get cracking, and then we'll start on the spots, which I work in a slightly different way to half stitch. Although you can do them in half stitch if you prefer that as well. So you can't quite see the glitter on the top of this green of the pattern, but I think once it comes off it will look quite nice. Just give a little bit of sparkle on the edge. So I'm just cloth stitching backwards and forwards, and I come to this first pair where the first plait, and I'm going to add pairs in. So again, I put a temporary pin. I just use one of the pinholes I've already got. Add 2 pairs in open formation on that, astride, rainbow style, whichever way term you know it as, and I cloth stitch through the first pair only and put 2 twists on, put the pin up, and then the 2 pairs you've added on are astride that pin and secured when it comes to tension it, and then cloth stitch back through to the left, leaving the 2 pairs out, the first plait. And we'll continue to do that for the next 3 plaits. So I'm just going to continue working this and adding the pairs in as I go. Each time adding them on a temporary pin and working through the first pair. And then this last one will come into the star. Once it's in the star, it'll come back out. So this is the point, and the last one that I'm going to add in on the left side, and then I'll work the right side in exactly the same way to get to the point over here where I've got the last plait coming in to come out, and then I'll come back to you. All of the pairs are now in place for all of the plaits. So I'm going to start now doing all of the plaits, and for those of you who are less experienced, it's just a continuous half stitch. I tend on cotton to do 2 half stitches and then to tension it. If you are working with a metallic thread, you might need to tension it every time, every stitch, and when you get towards the length that you want, you do tend to tension it then for every stitch. So I make all the plaits, and they want to be the length to get them to the holes where they're actually going to. So just work all of the plaits before we start the next area. Now we have to start the star. To start it with 2 plaits, I'm going to do a cloth stitch to start at the first pin. Work in with each pair as if they were a single and just tension that up. And then what I've got to decide is which way I'm going to go first. And I think there's very little difference, so it's personal choice whether you go left or right. I'm going to go to the right just because I can. So I'm going to take the second pair from the right and just cloth stitch through that first one. And then we've got another plait coming out for this half stitch spot, or this bud of some description. So I need to add 2 pairs in here, and it with the same on the other side, add 2 pairs in there. You can't leave them out because you've only got 4 pairs in, and that wouldn't leave anything to work the actual star with. So again, hang 2 on a temporary support pin. Work through the first pair and leave them out. 2 twists on and pin up. Temporary pin out, and then cloth stitch back through them. And that becomes the pair to go across to the right, and then do the same on the other side. Then we can do the little spots, the buds. Now it is quite tight in there with 3 pairs of passives at this very narrow point. I'm just going to put 1 row across just to secure it, but you need to be quite tight at the point to get the nice point in there, and it's opening out very, very quickly as well. So it's just about right, but you do need to be careful with your tension. So now I'm going to work the spot on the left. Again, I've got to do the plait. Now I'm going to do these in the way that a lot of old Bedfordshire was done, and that's not with half stitch. We put a pin between each of the plaits in the first 3 holes, because we've got 3 plaits coming in. And then we cloth stitch 3 pairs on the right through 3 on the left. Put the twist on each pair and pin up, and then off you go into plaits. So it's quite a nice, easy, quick way of doing these spots. And if you're making a lot of these little decorations, it really does speed it up. So start in the middle, like you do with half a spider, the first half of the spider, and cloth stitch the first one through to the left, take the next one on the right, cloth stitch that through to the left through 3 pairs, and then the last one through 3 pairs. Put 1 twist on all of the pairs, to mirror what you've got at the start, which you finished with a half stitch twist. Then you'll have a twist on here. If you do your half stitch plaits where you finish with them open, then again mirror that. So I know some countries and some areas do the half stitch plaits slightly differently. They start with a twist rather than a cross, but if you mirror image what you've done at the start, then they will look right. And then plait those, and that is all you need to do for those little spots. It's a lot less moves than doing the half stitch, but it's your choice. And I think on something as small as this, it is actually much neater. If the buds had more than 6 pinholes, then I would probably do it as half stitch. just to give a bit of a variety, and your eyes will see it as different textures to the cloth stitch, and that is the main aim of them. So I'm going to do the one on the other side because then we can get on with the star a bit further. I'll just do the plait, and then we'll do it again on the other side. That's long enough. Again, get your 6 pairs, put a pin between each of the 2 pairs and the plaits. So it makes it really nice and quick and easy to do. Assuming you've got twists in the right places like that one wasn't. So find your middle 2 pairs, start with those and go through 3 pairs. Take the next one through 3 pairs. And then the last one through 3 pairs. And it's just like you would be working a spider. And if you're working a spider, obviously you put a pin in the middle and repeat it. Or your basic spider anyway. And just tension it up and work your plaits. And then we're all ready to continue on with the star. So a bit further down you've got this plait coming in, which will help fill up the space here, and then we'll be putting pairs in across both arms of the star, the next bit of cloth stitch over here. At the moment we've got a couple of rows to do in cloth stitch on the star before we take them in. Say it was tight at the start, but these 3 pairs do actually fill up quite a bit of an area, and just as it starts getting a bit thin, you're taking pairs in. So the first one I'll come in through on the right. Now generally taking pairs in Bedfordshire from a plait, you will treat them as if they were 1 pair. You do 1 cloth stitch to bring them in, and then after that treat them as normal. So I would tend to take the twists off at this point, just to make the cloth stitch a bit smoother. Nobody's ever told me that, but just from personal experience I prefer to take the twists off. Just where it's come into the cloth stitch, so that you don't get any hint of a hole appearing. And obviously those of you who finish with a cross, then you've got that advantage, you don't need to do that. Now you can see with those plaits in, it's filling up that cloth stitch quite nicely. I'm going to come across to the right. And this is the point where this suddenly becomes a lot wider. But what I'm going to do is put the twists on, put the pin up and leave it there. I now go over to the right and I've got the pairs coming in and 1 going out, and then we're going to add pairs according to the diagram that we've got on the pattern sheet. So we're going to add pairs at every pinhole that there isn't anything coming in. This one will come into this pinhole, and the other 3 will be added in, and the same on the other side. When we've worked across from the right, the worker will drop down here, and then we will come across from the left all the way across. And this just fills up the points where you're likely to get a little bit of a hole if you're not careful. So I'm now going to be adding pairs in on this side. First of all, I'm going to put a pin up between that plait so that I know that that pinhole's taken care of, and then I've got 3 more where I'm going to add pairs in. So hanging 2 pairs in open formation on each of these pins, and once you've hung 2 pairs on, put 2 twists on one of the pair, doesn't matter which one, and then 2 more on the next pin. And we're going to do the same on both sides, so I'll just show you this side straight away and then how I'm going to work across it from the point. I know sometimes people say they'd like to see the full video of everything I do, but if you imagine this piece is probably going to take me 2 hours, that will be quite a long time to upload a video, to edit it and upload it. And I don't want to lose people because they're bored of watching the same cloth stitch over and over again. And it does take up a lot of space and time to actually do that. So I do tend to edit some of the repetitive stuff out. I am currently doing another one which will be a longer video as well though. So watch out for that, please subscribe and you'll see it coming soon. So I'm going to start again as I did before with a cloth stitch at the point and put the pin in halfway through the cloth stitch before the last move, and the 2 pairs on the right will now stay out for that point for the plait coming out, and then I'll work across to the other side where I left the worker on this first side. All the way across all of these pairs that you've put in, and the ones in the middle as well. And this is joining the star points together. Now you're getting quite a few pairs of bobbins on here now. So when I get to this point in the volley pin in here, I'm going to put the 2 twists on the worker pair that I've just used to come across from the point, put the pin in, and then this will become a passive. And I'll add them on from this side and work across, and I'll work all the way across this time. So I'm now going to do the same over this side as I did on the right hand side. I'm going to put the pin up between that plait and add pairs on the other pairs, on the other pins even. So this time I've got 1 there between the 2, and I'm going to add 2 pairs on. Everything's opened in open formation when you're hanging them on a pin like this, and we just add 2 twists on one of the pairs, and this just imitates it going around the pin as you do if you were working it as a worker pair. And 2 on this one. And make sure you don't catch additional pins, as I was doing there. Just on there. Now on here it looks as though the plait is actually coming to that pin, but it is actually going to come to the very pointy pin. So I want to mirror what I did on the right hand side, and I'm going to put 2 pairs on that pin. Does anybody else find you get too many P's when you try and talk about pins and pairs? You get quite tongue-tied at times when you've said it enough times. So that's all the pairs in place. And then I'll start with these 2 plaits coming in to this pin, or P's. And again, start with a cloth stitch and put the pin before the last move to close it. And then the left hand 2 pairs are left out. The next left hand one will come all the way across the whole row. So this is going to be a very long row of cloth stitch all the way across. And check in as you go, you've not lost and twisted the pairs, which is very easy to do, like that one. And this one. You've got so many pairs on now, they do tend to have a bit of a party when you're not looking and get themselves all in a twist. And this is where watching the threads really comes into its own. Again, you've still got them moving about a bit because they're only hanging over the pins. So I'm just checking where the 2 pairs are that's left out. Sometimes it helps if you just put a pin in to actually stop the pairs getting included. I'll just zoom out there, put a pin in to hold them back, a divider pin, you've got those, and then you don't take them in by mistake. Come all the way across, put your 2 twists on, only pin up. And this one's going to actually be leaving 2 pairs out. So your first 2 cloth stitch back through will be left out at this point, reducing the pairs going back down. Okay, so I've put this pin in this side, and then the next 2 pairs of bobbins are going to be left out of that plait. And again, I'm going to put them behind the pin so I don't mistakenly take them in when I come back. Because we've got so many pairs on, you do have to manage your pillow quite tightly to make sure everything stays where it needs to be. And we're going to go all the way back across and leave 2 pairs out on the other side of the plait, the mirror plait. And then when we come back after that, we'll come back to the centre and we'll divide so that we've got 2 workers, 1 for each side. And it is, again, it's quite tight. I've deliberately made this design so the star is completely solid. So you will have quite a lot of pairs in, perhaps more so than you would normally. But I wanted the star to be really dense to give you the contrast. Because it was designed for the keyring fob, I wanted to have that impact of a solid shape inside an airy ground. It's one of the things you have to consider the end use of when you're doing the designs like this. And a lot of people, you know, are astonished that some of these small pieces just take so many pairs, and you can be working an edging with as many pairs in. But it's to get these shapes nice and dense when you do the cloth stitch. It seems to take ages when you're coming back a long row like this. And again, I'm just checking which 2 pairs I've left out. I didn't put a divider pin over there, so I'll put one in now at this stage. Get the pairs all untwisted again. The last 2 pairs have come through. Those 2 pairs will now be left out, after putting this pin in, for the plait to come down to the spot below it. So those two are left out. And we're now going to work back to the middle, find the middle of the cloth stitch for the dividing. So I've just counted up to find the middle one, which is this pair here. I'm going to work 2, and that will become the worker for the other side. And I've currently got, or I will have, 11 pairs on each side to work with. So I've come to the one that's in the middle, I cloth stitch it, put one twist on both, put the pin in, cover the pin, and then these two are the workers, one for the left and one for the right. So I'll put those out the way and I'll work on the left hand side first. Now on this one you're going to have to get rid of some pairs, you're going to throw some pairs out because there's just too many pairs in here to go down, and there's only one more plait being left out. So the pairs are going to be thrown out on the left hand side because that's where it's getting narrower. So I'm just having a look and I'm going to throw a pair out straight away on the left. So you don't want to take the edge pair, we want to take next door but one, so not 2 bobbins as a pair, 2 bobbins and put them to the back. And we'll do this on each row to reduce it down a little bit until it looks to be filling the cloth stitch area at the same density. And I don't know off the top of my head how many pairs you'll have in at the narrowest point. You do it by judging it rather than counting at this stage. Now looking at this, you've also got the hole coming in, so this time, having gone across, I'm going to throw a pair out on the right hand side and come across. So that's 2 pairs I've thrown out so far. And if you alternate the sides when you need both sides to be reduced, then it just spaces out the throwing out a little bit. So next one I'll throw out on the right. Now I haven't shown on the pattern sheet this throwing out, but it's a technique that you use in Bedfordshire all the time, and the patterns do assume that you have a little bit of knowledge of Bedfordshire before you work something like this. But hopefully if you're less experienced, this video will help you understand the techniques involved. So I have 3 pairs I've thrown out now. Now the following row I'm going to be leaving 2 pairs out, so I'm not going to be throwing out on that row. I think we'll just throw one more out on the right and that may be enough to reduce it down. So that's 4 pairs so far I've thrown out on the right, on the left hand side of the star. And I'm just going backwards and forwards on the rows between the point part and the centre ring. And I'm just looking at how many I'll have in that centre. I think when I've left the 2 pairs out for the plait will be about right. When you get into this floral lace of Bedfordshire where you're putting pairs in and throwing them out, you can't say exactly how many pairs you need to throw out because everybody's tension does vary that little bit. If you use a different thread, it might be an equivalent one on the number of wraps, but every thread has its own properties and so they don't always work up exactly the same. If it's a softer twist, it will take up less space because the thread will squash together more. If it's a different type of thread, such as silk, it will slide together more. If it was linen, it'd be thicker working. All sorts of different properties affect the finish. So when you get a recommended thread, it is just a starting point. And that's perfect really for the size we've got there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got 4 passives and the worker at this point, at the narrowest point on the star here. Now I'm going to do exactly the same with the right hand side, and then we'll come round and we'll do the 2 spots, and then we're back down to the bottom of the star. Okay, so I've now done this right hand pointed of the star. I'm going to now work the plaits and the spots on both sides and bring the edge down so that I can finish the star. And I'll just do that off camera because I'm sure everybody by now knows how to make a plait, and I'll come back to you when both of those bits are done for the finishing 2 points of the star. I've now done the 2 little buds on either side, and I'm ready to complete the star. So my worker is on the left hand side for the left, and I'm going to work through to the middle where I'll meet the worker from the right hand side. So that's in the middle now. Find the worker over the other side and work it through to the middle. And I'm going to cloth stitch the 2 workers together, put 1 twist on both and the pin up in the middle. And I'm then going to take the right hand worker across the left hand side, and the other one will stay in the middle there as a passive. I'm going to work back across to the other side, going through all of the pairs from both sides. And that extra passive from the worker fills up the little bit of a space in the middle there. And then all the way back to the other side again. And then after this pin on the left hand side, I'm going to work back to the middle and meet the passive I left there, and then divide for the 2 separate points of the star. Now after dividing, I will actually use the pin on each side for a second time just to pack up the cloth stitch a little bit further. So this is the one I'm meeting, put 1 twist on both, the pin up in the centre, and you'll notice there is a plait coming out from that point. So after covering the pin, 1 pair will be left out from each side for that plait, and that means the plait will hang quite nicely from that pin. So I'm going to do that from both sides, and then I'm just going to plait that so that I don't get it again, don't make mistakes and take it in. I'm just going to plait that down before I continue the sides. So I'm going to finish the left hand side first. Now I may actually have thrown out 1 pair too many on the left by the look of it, but we'll see how I go. can always put one back in, which is the great advantage of this. You have to make those decisions as you go. We may be okay, we'll see. I've worked that by taking the pin out and just putting the pin back in, just under the worker pair, not catching the previous loop. Holding the passive inside of the pin, and you tension it, and this prevents it pulling in. Take the plait in at this point. I may be okay actually looking at the numbers now. Take those 2 twists off, work backwards and forwards. I'm going to finish the whole of this point before I return to the right hand side. I finish that side. Now again, this one is leaving 2 out, but I've just had 2 coming in, so I'm okay. So those 2 are left out for that plait. Now you'll notice as well, you've got 3 pinholes on the right and 2 on the left, if you count the bottom one. So this pinhole on the left here, the second one up, I'm going to use that one twice as well. Again, this is a new diagram if you need to check this. And look at these pairs. I've got 4 pairs left. No more to be left out apart from the 2 plaits at the end. So I do have the correct number in. I thought I was getting a little bit short, but I am correct. So this is on the 3rd pin up. So back to that second one. Again, doing these extra rows just packs the cloth stitch that little bit more firmly. So take the pin out just under the worker pair, not catching that loop. Hold this passive as you pull it up. The previous loop will disappear and it will pack it in nicely, and it will prevent it pulling it in as well. And then that is down to the last pin. You want to finish with 4 pairs, so you've got 2 plaits coming out of that pinhole. And then just cover the pin. Now I usually work right through to the other side, so that it evens the point up. Just makes it nicely finished. So that one's finished. And then we'll go back to the other side. I tend to do the plaits like this as I go, so that I don't get them confused. It's very easy when you've got a lot of pairs on to either take one in or leave one out where you shouldn't have. That one's left out there, that's already plaited. And I'm now going to finish the right hand point. So this is the pinhole I'll use twice. And I will come back to it the second time. I think on the diagram it may be the previous pin, but the diagrams are a guide, they're not rigid. If you feel it needs to be moved 1 pinhole for the back stitch using the pin twice, that's perfectly okay as well. Sometimes you decide it's better with your tension to move it down 1. Bedfordshire's a little bit more free and easier regarding that compared with some of the laces. You have to make the decisions, and a lot of people find that quite difficult and challenging when they first start with the floral laces. So that's using it the second time. Now you see I've got 5 pairs on this side, so I am going to need to throw a pair out compared with the other side. Compared with the left, I thought I got a different number on the right for some reason. I probably didn't throw one out higher up when I should have done, but it's fine. The point looks okay. The star on this side looks okay, so that's fine as well. And I'll throw it out in a minute. as long as you plan ahead. You just have to keep looking to see what you're going to need to finish on these. Now, because I've taken those in, it is quite dense, and I think at this stage I'll throw a pair out. Don't really want to be throwing them out right at the end. They're not quite so well held in then. Thrown one out, and I've now got the same number as I had on the other side. This one I'm going to leave out the plait. Now for some reason I don't seem to need to do a backstitch here, so maybe I did one higher up. Again, it's something that is variable and you work according to your pattern rather than rigidly working to the diagram. So I'm down to the last pin. I've got 4 pairs, which is what I want, and that's the star finished. We just now have to finish the bud at the bottom and then bring the trails round to meet. Now what I do want to do, and what I always do when I'm finishing a motif, is not to finish at the centre. And that's because your eye is always drawn to the centre of a piece when you're looking for the finishing. But because I said I wanted to add a hanging loop to this one, I am going to finish here between this. So my finishing pin will be this one, right between those 2 plaits, so that when I hang it up, this will become the top point of the hanging and give you the same impression as if it was finished at the centre. You could finish it centre bottom if you wanted to hang it upside down, or if you were planning ahead, you could start it with a hanging loop. All of which are perfectly okay to change the design and the way it's worked, just depending on your level of experience. So again, I'm putting these plaits in to do this bud. And the other thing I want to show you is throwing out the pairs in the edge trail before we get to the hanging loop. That's 1, 2, and a 3 to finish. Now when you've taken the pairs into the passives on the edge, you're going to be getting quite a number going in from the plaits, and you do have to keep throwing pairs out. Obviously you're going to throw pairs out that have been in there the longest, so that they're held tightly in the cloth stitch. And I'll just show you on a couple on this edge, and then I'll go away and get the edge done to the point of the join, and then come back to you on it. So again, to take pairs in, take them in as if they're 1 pair. Just zoom back out so you can see that a little bit more. So take them in as if they're 1 pair, 1 cloth stitch to take in. This reduces the bulk of it. These 2 now are in the cloth stitch, but they won't be held for a few rows. So I'm going to throw 1 pair out straight away from the existing pairs here, and then work a few rows until I get to the point where I'm going to take in the next plait before I throw another one out. But you've got to try and keep the number of pairs down to 3 as far as possible. 3 passives, 3 pairs of passives to keep the edge constant, and we're going to leave the outside one always in there, always on the edge, so that you don't disturb the line of the edge. And with me having the gold in there, I don't want to be throwing pairs out from the gold. If they're all the same colour, it's not quite so critical, but you still want to leave the edge untouched if you can. So I've got 4 pairs in at the moment. When I come back through to take the next one in, I'll throw one out straight away, and that reduces them down. Now the next pinhole does have 2 coming in at the same point, and I do want to stop a few pinholes further on, and this trail around the other side will come in, and there'll be a lot more thrown out on the left hand side. I'm just going to go across, and I'll throw 1 pair out straight away before I come across to it, and I'll be down then to the 3 pairs, but I will be taking 4 in at the next pin. So I'm going to throw 2 pairs, 1 pair out even, 2 bobbins, and then come across and taking the 2 plaits at the same point. Now, having taken those 2 in, the 4 bobbins, I haven't taken the 2 in, having taken the 2 plaits in, you've now got an additional 4 pairs. Straight away I can throw 1 out from next to the gold, so they've been in the longest, and when I come across I can throw another pair out. I've got to try and get down to the number I need for the join. So I'll throw another pair out. Oops, not going off here. I'm going to do 1 more row, and I will finish at this pinhole here. This will be the join, this one. Now, looking at the placement of the pins, I'm going to leave it at that point until I come back, bring this trail round, throw in pairs out, and then I'll come back to you on the join. I've now got down to the last plait being taken into the edge trail. Take that in, throw some more pairs out, and then we'll do the join. I have thrown out a lot of pairs at this stage, and they're all attached at the back of the pillow still, and then they'll be cut off before we take the lace off the pillow. A couple of more pinholes to do. And I've still got to reduce this left side down to the required 3 pairs of passives to be able to finish it. Now, if you're actually doing this without the hanging loop, I'll talk you through that as well, although I have done another video on that, on a different motif. But just in case you wanted a quick refresher to save looking for the other video. Sometimes it's good to see it in a second time in a slightly different motif, because it does mean that you've got different context with it. I'm just trying to get this in a better position, but unfortunately the tripod leg's in the way. So this is the pin on the inside I'm going to join at. I've already done this one in the inside, so I'm going to have to do a back stitch at one point, and I'm going to do it, I think, well, I've got to do it on the right hand side because I want to join at that pin that I've got left on the inside, and I've still got a couple of pairs to throw out here, so that will help me as well. I haven't quite got down to the number of pairs I want, so I've got 4 pairs now in the right, so if you use that pin for a second time, and then I can throw out another pair there as well. And now I'm going to come and do the joining. I need 2 workers to work together. 1, 2, I've got 4 on that side, so once I've put this pin in, I can throw another pair out on the left as well. Now at this point you would do it exactly the same as this if you were finishing off to go in a keyring. If you don't want the hanging loop, and you cover the pin and work both pairs, the right one out to the right side, the left one out to the left side, in exactly the same way. So I've now got down to the 3 pairs I want. I'll just take this one out to the outside. And the left one out to the outside. If we were joining it without the hanging loop, what we would do is start in the middle. I'll zoom out a little. We would start in the middle. You've got 3 pairs on each side. You would knot those 2 together, 1 from either side, then the next 2 and the next 2, so that the 2 pairs, the 2 ends meet like this in a trail across the number of pairs of passives. But I'm not going to do that with this one. I'm going to create a hanging loop. So what I'm going to do is the 3 pairs of passives are going to go from the right through the 3 on the left. Again, to form the half a spider, and this will just pull up the passives on the trail, and then I'll put a pin between them, and then we'll close the pin with the workers. So put the pin in and tension them up. So that's the 3 passives on the right through the 3 on the left. That has filled the space in there now. And we're now just going to bring the worker from the left through to the middle, and the one from the right through to the middle, through the 3 pairs of passives, and cloth stitch them together. Now to form the hanging loop, all we're going to do is a plait with 4 pairs on the left and 4 pairs on the right. So 2 plaits, which will then be knotted overhand to form the hanging loop. So again, using each pair as if they were a single, just do a continuous half stitch. Now because I've got this glitter thread in here, you will have to, if you do the same as I've done, you will have to be careful on the tensioning, because the glitter thread doesn't tension up quite as much. I could have thrown this back and got rid of it, but I think the hanging loop will look quite nice with a bit of a twist of gold through it, which you can't see at the moment on the camera, but once I get it off the pillow, I'll be able to show you the finished item. I think you'll see it, and hopefully it will look good. So you make this first side as long as you want half of the loop to be, and I usually do them about 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres long, just to give something you can hook onto the tree with a clip or a bauble hanger, something like that. You've got to have enough to be able to loop through it, but you don't want it too long either. Personal choice how long you make it. I think that's probably about enough. And then what I do, I take one bobbin from each side, I lengthen them a little bit, I take them over the top, round underneath the bundle of threads and back over the top, and then knot them to hold them in place. Do a reef knot over the top of the bundle, and this will hold it secure until you've done the other side. Then we'll cut them off long and then we'll tie them together with an overhand knot. So we want to keep that fairly local to it so we can measure it. And we can make the second side the same length. Although it's not quite so critical because you can lose it in the overhand knot if you've made one slightly longer than the other. Just try and get this nice and even. And on a plait like this, where I'm weaving with a metallic thread, I am tensioning every stitch rather than every two that I would do if it was just cotton. And I'm also watching the length to see how we're going. We'll go a little bit more yet, not much. Just keep checking it. One or two more half stitches, one more I think that's about right. So take one from either side. You have to lengthen them a little bit to be able to take the knot over the top in opposing directions, round underneath the bundle, and exchange them, and this just wraps that little bundle of threads. Them tight, pull them up, and then a reef knot over the top. Right over left, left over right. And then I'll lengthen them all a little bit to be able to cut them. So I've got enough of an end to be able to get hold of. And then if you get hold of the threads and just pull them down straight and cut them, holding on to the ends, and then do an overhand knot over the knot you've already done. I cut those a little bit short, probably have cut them a little bit longer had I not been trying to get it on the camera. And before you pull it up, if you put a needle in, you can guide it to exactly where you want it on there. Pull that up tight and then just trim it. Just maybe 5mm, 1/4 inch above the knot. And then you've got your hanging loop. I'm now going to cut the bobbins off, take the pins out. Well, I've cut the bobbins off, trim the threads, which I can show you when I've got some of the pins out in the centre, and then we can take it off the pillow. So I've cut the bobbins off long and just left the ends, so I've got something to get hold of. I'm now going to take the centre pins out, leaving all of the edge ones in, and then I can get in and give it a trim. This has now got all of the pins out. I've pushed down a few at the top here so that I can get the scissors in. Now what we have to do is to take some very sharp pointed scissors. These have got a little bit of a bobble on to try and prevent you cutting the work. And then we're going to pull them up one thread at a time and under tension snip them. Your scissors must be sharp at the point to be able to do this. So you put your scissors on, you pull the thread up, difficult to show you with the camera, pull it up under tension and snip. and this means that the tiny wispy end disappears into the cloth stitch, and I've got to do that for all of the ends before we take the final pins out. I'll be back in a moment when I've trimmed that off. And that's the motif all trimmed. Now just to take the final pins out for the final shot of the finished piece. And there we have the finished little motif ready to hang on the Christmas tree. Or if you made it without the hanging loop, then it's ready for mounting it in your key fob. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a thumbs up, and especially appreciate you if you've already subscribed. But if you haven't, please subscribe and hit the notifications button. It really does help me get my videos seen out there and help me keep making videos in the future. The heart-shaped one that is on the pattern sheet as well, that will be available in coming weeks. I won't say how soon because life's getting very busy on the run up to Christmas. But if you've got any other videos you'd like to see, please let me know and I'll do my best to add them to the list. I am currently working on one for the butterfly motif, which is a bigger 4-inch motif to be mounted on a ring and hang at your window, and hopefully that'll be coming up in December. Thanks for watching, hope you've enjoyed it and learned how to make this little star motif. You're an absolute star, keep subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.